Hello everyone, and welcome to my General Hospital Today channel. Sidwell got angry, and when Sidwell got angry, the whole world seemed to shift, tighten, and then collapse under his control as he took down all 4 victims at once, leaving Port Charles reeling under a wave of fear that no one saw coming until it was far too late. The twist, however, wasn't just Sidwell's sudden explosion of force, but the revelation that Nathan West, long thought to be recovering, rehabilitating, or simply confused about his missing memories, might actually have been behind the secret blackmail photos all along. Rumors rippled through Port Charles like an electrical storm the moment Sidwell produced the photos. Sonny Corinthos caught standing beside Laura Collins, whose car trunk contained the lifeless body of Professor Henry Hank Dalton, the same man Laura later reported finding under mysterious circumstances before the entire city began speculating about a cover-up. Sidwell revealed those photos calmly, almost with a scientist's detachment, but underneath the cool exterior was the rage of a man who had been betrayed repeatedly, cornered, and pushed into a position where he believed the only path forward was to destroy every obstacle at once. The shock wasn't just the photos, it was the fact that he seemed to have them before anyone even knew they existed, raising the glaring question, who took them? The initial assumption was Pascal, because Pascal had been everywhere that night, cleaning up, chauffeuring Britt Westbourne around, keeping his ear close to every crack in the mansion walls at Windermere. He was Sidwell's errand man, trained in quiet, efficient shadow work. It would have made perfect sense for Pascal to take a detour while Britt was distracted and snap a few quick shots of Sonny and Laura at the scene. But when you laid out the timeline, the angles of the photos, the graininess, and even the body language of the people captured, one name fit far better, and that name was Nathan West. Nathan's sudden appearance that night had already been suspicious. He had popped up out of absolutely nowhere, tapping on Laura's car window just moments after she stumbled upon Dalton's body, startling her so sharply that even she later admitted it felt planned, though she couldn't articulate why. Nathan said he had been driving by. Nathan said he saw Laura's car light on. Nathan said he was just checking on her because he felt something was off. Nice story, almost perfect. Too perfect. But what if he wasn't checking on her at all? What if he was watching her? What if he was watching everything? When Sonny Corinthos arrived, the dynamic changed immediately. Nathan suddenly claimed he had been called away for urgent work business and disappeared so fast Laura barely had time to process it. But that excuse never sat well with anyone paying attention. Nathan wasn't dressed like a man rushing to a crime scene. He didn't grab his radio. He didn't check his phone in front of him. He simply said the line and vanished into the shadows. And if Nathan truly had lost 7 years of memory, if he was still unstable, still struggling, still rediscovering himself, what urgent assignment would the PCPD assign him in the dead of night that required him to flee a potential crime scene involving the mayor and Sonny Corinthos, the most volatile figure in Port Charles? No. He wasn't called away. He was stepping back. He was getting the distance he needed to snap his photos without being seen. Then there were the clues, quiet, scattered moments that didn't stand out individually but formed a devastating pattern when assembled. Nathan watching Sidwell too closely sometimes, as if waiting for acknowledgement. Sidwell's strange, almost paternal disappointment whenever Nathan made a mistake. Nathan's uncanny reflexes returning before his memory did, suggesting training, specialized training, had been drilled into him during those missing years. His sudden, inexplicable familiarity with weapons he shouldn't remember. His hyper-awareness in rooms where no threat appeared to exist. A glaze that sometimes fell over his eyes, almost mechanical, triggered by words Sidwell used: focus, reset, listen, follow through. Words that sounded eerily like commands, not conversation. These moments, unnoticed separately, began forming a frighteningly coherent narrative. Nathan West was not the man he used to be. Nathan West may no longer even be Nathan at all. The idea that he had been brainwashed or subjected to some type of memory mapping, a procedure his father, Caesar Faison, once obsessed over, began to gain traction among those who dared whisper about it. Faison had manipulated minds before. He had built psychological prisons, rewritten identities, and obsessed over molding people into his image. What if Nathan, the man who had spent half his life trying to escape Faison's shadow, had instead become the monster's legacy? What if those 7 lost years weren't lost at all, but overwritten? Replaced? Reprogrammed? Nothing about Nathan's behavior ruled that out. In fact, everything seemed to support it. Nathan was too smooth. Too calm. Too capable. Too obedient at times. He didn't act like a man shaken by trauma, he acted like a man executing a mission without fully understanding why. And Sidwell played his part perfectly. He was furious, yes, but also precise. When he lashed out and took down 4 victims at once, it wasn't random violence. It was the act of a man who believed betrayal had boxed him into a corner. He was using the photos not just as leverage against Sonny and Laura, but to expose the fact that someone was feeding him information from deep inside the PCPD and possibly deeper inside Port Charles's social network. Sidwell now held proof that the mayor and Sonny Corinthos had been present at a potential crime scene involving Dalton's corpse. Whether they were guilty of anything didn't matter, the optics alone were devastating. And Sidwell was a man who understood optics better than most. So how did he get the photos? The answer always circled back to Nathan. Nathan was the only person confirmed to be physically close enough that night. He approached Laura. He watched Sonny arrive. He disappeared into the darkness. And he had a perfect vantage point from the wooded road behind her parked car, exactly where the photos appeared to have been taken. The shadows matched. The angle matched. The urgency in Laura's posture matched the moment Nathan frightened her. The timestamp lined up exactly with the window between Nathan tapping on the glass and Nathan claiming he had to leave. It was too precise to be coincidence. But why? Why would Nathan betray Laura? Why would he betray Sonny? Why would he betray anyone? Because Nathan might not see it as betrayal. Sidwell may have become, in Nathan's fractured mind, a figure of authority, someone to obey, someone who held the key to his missing years. If brainwashing or memory manipulation was at play, Sidwell could be the handler, the anchor, the new father figure replacing the monstrous shadow of Faison. Or worse, Sidwell could simply be the trigger, activating behaviors implanted during those 7 lost years. There were moments where Nathan didn't act like himself at all, the flat stare, the sudden mood shifts, the lack of emotional reaction to situations that would have broken the old Nathan. And then there were the moments where he did seem like himself, protective, warm, earnest, but those moments felt like echoes rather than reality. Like a part of him trying to surface but being pushed back down. If Nathan had indeed been spying that night, it explained everything, Sidwell's confidence, his timing, his certainty. It also explained Nathan's evasive behavior since then. He avoided eye contact when Laura discussed Dalton. He stiffened when Sonny mentioned the investigation. He became irritable whenever someone brought up memory therapy. And every time Sidwell entered the room, Nathan's shoulders tightened, but not with fear. With recognition. All signs pointed directly at Nathan being Sidwell's mysterious partner, whether willingly or through manipulation. The partnership didn't need to be equal. Nathan could easily be a pawn in a larger game. Sidwell was clever enough to keep that card hidden until the moment he needed to play it, and with his rage now on full display, this was the moment. If Sidwell had taken down 4 victims at once, it wasn't random. It was calculated. It was a message. And the message was, I have eyes everywhere. I have proof. I have power. And behind that power stood a man no one suspected, a man who once stood for justice and moral clarity. A man who claimed to have lost 7 years of his life but maybe lost far more. A man who watched Laura through the darkness. A man who left Sonny and Laura standing beside a corpse and slipped back into the trees, camera in hand. The more the puzzle pieces slid into place, the more the horrifying reality became undeniable. Sidwell's explosion of violence, his 4-victim takedown, his sudden confidence and ruthlessness, none of it existed in isolation. Everything hinged on the silent shadow operating beneath the chaos, and that shadow kept leading back to Nathan West, a man who once embodied honesty and stability now caught in a swirling storm of suspicion, mystery, and fragmented identity. The aftermath of Sidwell's brutal moves rippled across Port Charles like a shockwave, leaving chaos, speculation, and fear in its wake. Yet the real story wasn't Sidwell's rage, it was the quiet machinery behind it, the hidden gears turning in the dark, powered by someone who shouldn't have been anywhere near such darkness. Nathan's presence that night at the Dalton scene had been too perfect, too conveniently timed, and too emotionally muted. No one questioned him because Nathan West had always been beyond questioning. He'd been the dependable detective, the moral compass, the heart-driven protector who never wavered from the truth. But this Nathan, the post-memory loss Nathan, was not that man. He was something else entirely, something colder beneath the surface, something calculating even when he pretended not to be, something that seemed programmed rather than instinctive. And now that Sidwell had unleashed his vengeance, the question was no longer whether Nathan took the blackmail photos, it was whether Nathan had been the orchestrator of much more. Port Charles, at its core, was a place built on secrets stacked atop secrets, but the Dalton incident had become a crack large enough for the entire foundation to crumble. As the public learned that Laura Collins and Sonny Corinthos had been photographed standing beside a corpse stuffed inside Laura's trunk, the city erupted, whispers in the Metro Court bar, emergency meetings behind locked doors at the PCPD, frantic damage control from the mayor's office, and Sonny's organization going into silent lockdown. But beneath the panic ran a quieter thread: who took the photos? Who gave them to Sidwell? And what did Sidwell plan to do with Nathan beyond this? Nathan walked through the aftermath like a ghost, present but not truly there. His eyes drifted too long on blank walls, as if he were listening to a voice only he could hear. He seemed disconnected, but not in the way trauma survivors typically were. His disconnect felt purposeful, like he was conserving emotional energy for a moment he knew was coming. Even the way he spoke to his sister seemed off, his tone too even, too regulated, lacking the warmth that used to characterize their bond. The old Nathan would have hugged, reassured, argued, or comforted. This Nathan observed. Calculated. Adjusted. As if he was trying to mimic the emotions he remembered rather than feeling them. If Sidwell had been controlling him, truly controlling him, then Nathan may not even be fully aware of what he'd done. Brainwashing didn't always operate like a hypnotic trance, sometimes it worked like compartmentalized memory slots, triggering certain behaviors only in certain moments. If Nathan had alternate programming, triggered by specific commands or environmental cues, then it was entirely possible he had snapped those photos, delivered them to Sidwell, and then re-emerged with no conscious recollection of doing so. That would explain his confusion, his inconsistencies, and his vacant stares when confronted with emotionally charged events. It also explained Sidwell's particular confidence that the photos could never be traced back to him. Nathan had been in the perfect position physically, emotionally, and psychologically to execute Sidwell's orders without questioning them. And if Sidwell had access to whatever was done to Nathan during those 7 missing years, if he had the codes, the phrases, the triggers, then Nathan wasn't just a partner. Nathan was a weapon. The 4 victims Sidwell took down were not random targets, and their connection to the Dalton incident was becoming clearer. Each of them had been in a position to expose Sidwell, or to expose the person feeding Sidwell information. One had been a low-level courier who witnessed a conversation between Sidwell and a shadowy figure resembling Nathan. Another had been a tech specialist who noticed irregular access logs connected to Nathan's PCPD credentials. The third victim had been a Windmere staffer who cleaned a guest room and found a hidden earpiece device matching the kind used in covert surveillance operations. And the fourth, perhaps the most dangerous of them all, had been a private investigator hired by someone close to Laura, who claimed they saw a familiar police silhouette at the scene the night Dalton's body was found. If all 4 of them were closing in on the truth about Nathan, Sidwell's reaction made perfect sense. He knew he couldn't afford a leak, especially not during the crucial phase of whatever operation he was building. Sidwell didn't lash out impulsively, he eliminated threats systematically. And the fact that Nathan showed little shock upon hearing about the 4 deaths, barely a flicker of emotion, only cemented the horrifying possibility that he either didn't care or didn't fully register the implications. Meanwhile, Laura spiraled deeper into suspicion. Her instincts, usually sharp, kept circling back to that strange moment Nathan tapped on her window. She replayed it endlessly, the gentle knock, the forced concern in his voice, the way he looked past her shoulder as if assessing the trunk before she even opened it. She remembered feeling exposed, observed, judged. At the time, she chalked it up to panic from discovering a body, but now, the memory tasted sour, wrong. Laura wasn't the type to make accusations without proof, but she had been in politics long enough to trust her internal alarms. And they were blaring now, louder with each passing day. Sonny shared her instincts, though he verbalized them with far less restraint. He didn't trust the new Nathan. He didn't believe the memory loss narrative. Sonny had spent years reading men, fathers, enemies, informants, traitors, and he knew when someone was playing a role. Nathan was playing something. Whether it was a role he chose or one forced onto him didn't matter to Sonny. What mattered was that he was dangerous. The deep irony of the situation was that the old Nathan had despised manipulation, despised secrecy, despised everything associated with Faison's legacy. And yet here he was, quite possibly trapped inside a psychological labyrinth created by similar tactics. If Faison had truly been involved in Nathan's missing years, it would explain so much: the fragmented memory, the emotional disconnection, the heightened vigilance, the odd flashes of aggression quickly smoothed over by charm. And if Sidwell had somehow acquired Faison's research, or worse, inherited one of Faison's protégés, then Nathan's transformation wasn't an accident. It was a design. A blueprint. A continuation of something much darker. As more details emerged, people began noticing odd patterns. Nathan always arrived exactly when Sidwell needed him, yet never appeared aware of what Sidwell already knew. He acted surprised at information Sidwell revealed publicly, but his body language never matched the shock on his face. His startled responses were delayed, not natural. The way he gripped his police badge felt wrong, like he was holding a prop. His connection to Maxie lacked the emotional fluency of their previous bond. When she expressed fear about Sidwell, Nathan's reassurance felt scripted, like he was reciting familiarity rather than feeling it. And then there were the micro-expressions, the split-second glances of confusion, fear, or recognition that vanished before anyone could comment. Those tiny flashes were the only glimpses of the real Nathan left in him. If those flashes grew stronger, if Nathan began piecing together his role in Sidwell's scheme, Sidwell's entire operation risked collapse. Sidwell knew that. He wasn't just using Nathan, he was monitoring him. Testing him. Pushing him. Sidwell needed Nathan loyal, silent, dependable. A perfect spy. A perfect pawn. A perfect hybrid between cop and criminal. But Sidwell also knew that once Nathan regained full awareness, the carefully manufactured control might shatter. And if the real Nathan resurfaced, the guilt alone could destroy him or turn him violently against Sidwell. The tragedy in all of this was that Nathan didn't even understand the danger he posed. He walked through Port Charles like a time bomb, unaware of the countdown ticking inside him. His colleagues trusted him because of who he used to be. His family trusted him because they wanted to believe he was healing. Laura trusted him because he had been a friend. Sonny tolerated him because Maxie loved him. But no one realized that the man they saw was a reconstructed shell, polished, functional, but hollowed out by forces beyond his control. Sidwell's takedown of the 4 victims had exposed the surface-level chaos, but beneath that chaos lay a deeper, more sinister truth. Sidwell wasn't simply blackmailing Laura and Sonny. He wasn't just eliminating witnesses. He was protecting his investment. His project. His experiment. Nathan. And now, the most terrifying question of all loomed: how far would Sidwell go to keep Nathan under his thumb? Would he wipe Nathan's memory again? Activate more programming? Turn Nathan against Maxie? Use him to take down Laura and Sonny permanently? Or unleash him on the PCPD from the inside? Port Charles had survived mob wars, serial killers, toxic secrets, and government conspiracies, but it had never faced something like this: a beloved hero rewritten as an enemy, a father's legacy repeating itself, and a mastermind capable of weaponizing trauma, memory, and identity to create the perfect infiltrator.